Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the December 2nd meeting of the Town of Richmond Select Board. Since our last meeting, the month and the seasons and the weather have all changed. It's now December, it's now winter, it's now cold, and it's now snowing. Before we begin, would anybody care to make a public comment? Kara.
Carla Bounty, and I put it in writing so that I could take and be brief and not I'm coming to you to help heal our community and hoping you can take a moment and listen with an open mind. For years, I've attended meetings because community members have asked me to do so. Even some of your supporters have sent me emails, people you wouldn't ever guess would do so. I don't attend these meetings because I can't afford my taxes. These are the budget meetings and the select board meetings. But I come to represent community members who are afraid to come forward to ask questions or to give their opinions. They fear the select board and town staff would make disparaging comments about them or even retaliate through zoning or other tactics if they disagree with either the select board or town staff. At the special select board budget meeting held last week on November 25th, people's fears were validated, and not just once, but twice. During this meeting, when I was speaking about my own personal experience regarding taxes, I was interrupted and yelled at by a select board member to say, I am not telling the truth. The select board member proceeded to talk about tax rates. I was not speaking of tax rates. Paying taxes and tax rates are not the same thing. I was talking about the check that I was writing. Those are my taxes. I was telling the truth as far as my taxes for 9 out of the past 10 years. 1 year I misspoke and my taxes that I wrote a check for went down $25. So I apologize for generalizing 10 of the past years, 9 out of those 10. I will move forward using different language to speak clearly when I'm speaking about budgets and taxes. These people's fears were also validated at the start of the public meeting when These people's fears were also validated at the start of this public meeting when it opened with a disparaging comment made about me by a town employee. I requested and have received a letter of apology. You say you want people to come to meetings and participate. You had only 2 people from the public commenting on the budget that night, and you attacked one to start the meeting and again during the meeting. I conducted myself in a professional manner even after hearing these comments. Richmond Select Board allows for this toxic environment where people are asking questions, recommending changes, and are so easily attacked. People are afraid of you and town employees, and they have just cause to be. Communities grow through robust discussions and diverse opinions and ideas. Disagreement leads to growth when appropriately used. Thank you, and good luck with the rest of your evening. And I really hope you can do something to help the rest of the community who doesn't attend your meetings because they're afraid of you and your town employees.
Mr. Chairman, I'm the person who interrupted Kara the other night. And regardless of the merits of what Kara was saying that night, I should not have interrupted her, and I do apologize. Occasionally things get fast and furious here, but again, that's no justification to interrupt a fellow select board member, a town employee, or in this case, the member of the public, and for that I do apologize.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Kara. I do want to say that a number of us are fighting things that are difficult to go through, and there are times when even we have trouble holding our composure. I don't excuse that. I recognize that, and I just ask for everybody's patience going forward. Anybody else? Okay. Dashboard, any additions, changes, or deletions to tonight's agenda?
I would just like to note that I was frightened and confused when I looked at the agenda and went, wait, this gets done by 7:30.
I'm gonna hold you to that. Okay,
The prediction.
Lisa, you have new glasses.
Thank you. You noticed, yeah. Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up.
And you have less thumb.
Yeah, almost.
Okay, moving into tonight's warrant agenda. First, this is a reminder of the Monday, December 9th special meeting for discussion of the fiscal year 26 budget. Any comments on that?
No, just I guess at the last meeting, we discussed a lot of things in the budget, so I think this is a pretty important budget meeting to be at next Monday, and then we've also discussed adding another meeting potentially in December, depending how this meeting goes, to December 17th, which would be the Tuesday after the next select board meeting, so if we do that, we'll give it plenty of warning and let the public know, but
David, sorry, I missed this. Sorry, we're in the warrant agenda now, but in additions and deletions, did we skip over that or did I? zone
No, we
out?
covered that, but we can go back.
And say, I think we should have a cursory couple of minute discussion about the recent break-ins and stuff and just an update of what's going on and all that. Obviously, we can't have any, we can't do any, can't take any actions, no action items because we didn't warn it, but I suspect
Several
that at
people
least
have
a few
reached out
people-
to me. I've
Yeah.
waited to respond because I want to sort of figure out what to say.
Yeah, it
There's so
shouldn't
many
be just
moving-
you. I think it should be the town.
Yeah,
board.
there's so many moving parts here.
Mhm.
I will say that Richmond is not alone. Surrounding towns have also experienced what our acting police chief has described, crimes of opportunity.
Mhm.
So we shouldn't have to lock our cars. We shouldn't have to leave security lights on. We shouldn't have to keep an eye on our neighbors. But the reality is it's a good idea to do so in an ounce of prevention. Go ahead, Bard.
So David, just for procedural matters, we're now treating this as an agenda item, as an addition to the agenda?
Yeah, so do you want to add it in or?
I
add it
guess.
I mean, because we've engaged, we're starting to
we
engage in
doing
a
it
conversation, so
between-
maybe we should just
between A and
officially
B?
say it's
It's now an
three
agenda item.
A and
A minus,
8.5.
A.1 versus 8.2.
But
Well, good, because there's a lot of things to talk about, so.
yeah, it is germane to the discussion of budgeting. Because as we all know, law enforcement is a significant part of our municipal budget. And options and funding for law enforcement will be discussed in the upcoming budget. Bard?
So Adam, I think you're probably the only person that's seen my litany of personal experience with crime in Vermont.
Yeah.
Going back 40 years or so across several towns. So unfortunately for me, break-ins, car thefts and car break-ins this was not my first rodeo. Before Richmond, my daughter's car was broken into at our home on Tilden Avenue about 10 years ago. The last time there was a single person, that was like a crime spree of one. I also had a conversation with our police chief this morning after there were a bunch of back and forth of people in the Tilden Avenue broader neighborhood about this with great concern. And I think I asked the chief to contemplate what the messaging should be going out to the town as a whole, because it's not just Richmond. There are a number of stories in Huntington, Starksboro, and other towns as well. Some of which are fully staffed with police, some of which have no police department whatsoever. Chief Cambridge described to me that they occasionally find a vehicle stolen in town A, in town B, and inside that vehicle are stolen items from towns A, B, C, and beyond. So one would conclude that even on an individual basis, that the individuals engaging this behavior are not targeting a single town. It's part of a broader issue, and I think the data about that, and unfortunately, in the meantime, there are the things that we know to do there are two extremes. Either lock your car and leave nothing in sight in your car, because that is the easiest thing. Also, another strategy that was used in New York in the 80s is unlock your car, take everything out of it, leave the dashboard, like the glove compartment open and empty. So people can go in and rifle through it, but there's nothing there.
And don't leave your keys.
And a crucial thing is don't leave anything of value, most particularly the keys to the vehicle inside the vehicle. Another conspicuous one is don't leave a firearm in your vehicle. Those are actual recent events. It is very common when people are apprehended, in these vehicles that they have multiple firearms that they have stolen from various places. So that's another take home, secure your firearms. And unfortunately, it would seem, in a new baseline. So those are the things that I sort of know, but to close it out, I suggested that our police chief think about a message to the public that's more informed from a law enforcement professional about what information do we want to give people and what guidance. I would also observe that my personal experience in like at least 3 different episodes in Burlington, back when Burlington was fully staffed with police, the full police staffing did not seem to prevent the crimes, either break-ins or vehicle thefts. And that there are other towns that never had a police department that are suffering. So it seems to be somewhat independent of police. And even with a small number of police officers, the likelihood that an officer would be in the neighborhood when that actual event is occurring is pretty unlikely. And that's unfortunate as well, that we don't have officers walking a beat like all night in a city, which was what happened maybe 100 years ago. I will say that people are, anxious, angry, confused, hurt. There was one example from another town where a vehicle was damaged, and apparently because of the circumstances, no insurance is likely to cover it. That family is out like $50,000 of a vehicle that was stolen and destroyed. So I think we need to treat this seriously. The common element would appear to be opioids, and it's people from all over. It is not just people coming to Richmond. My metaphor, it's like people hunting deer. Where would you go? Where are the deer? And there are deer all over the
Good
place.
analogy.
And I think they tend to strike the village and town centers or main roads where you can just pop in and pop out. So that's the little that I know, but hopefully, I think our police chief is likely to send out perhaps a more coherent professional message than what I
And
just.
people should feel free to reach out to Anthony Cambridge for advice. Bart, as you alluded to, a lot of this is preventable, just removing the opportunity. It's interesting, the discussion about locking cars. As you know, I have a few convertibles. Every time I loan them to my sons or my wife, I say, whatever you do, do not lock it. Because I don't want somebody to rip a $5,000 top to find out there's nothing in there to steal, and I'm out $5,000. So if you ever see my car, it's always unlocked, but I always lock everything else.
I know we have a couple of hands up, but I wanted to ask a quick question. I live way outside the village on a dirt road. So this isn't applicable to where I live, but do we have any form of neighborhood watch program here in Richmond?
Exactly. That's what I was gonna. wrote that
I don't
down.
believe we do, but I know that there is interest in starting it.
Mhm.
In my neighborhood, there is.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
not
That's
that
where all the
people are
deer
gonna
are.
sit up all night taking turns watching the street at 2 o'clock in the morning, but
No.
it could help.
Yeah,
What an effective neighborhood watch group can do is think like the criminal. They've
Yeah.
got evidence of how they think because they see what they're doing. I mean, they don't see it, but they see the results. So go around, look for things in a car, but you're the next door neighbor.
yeah.
Well, that
And
is
let
true.
that person to know to take those things out or give them a call,
If
whatever.
you see something, say something.
Exactly. Mhm.
One final addendum, that interestingly, people use game cameras as an attempted deterrent. And one of the things that the chief described is the number of game cameras that they find in the back of stolen vehicles because they have a local SIM card. So you just take the whole thing and now there's no evidence.
Right.
Card out, yeah.
That said, he did also suggest that an appropriate thing to do is to get a security camera, and there are a number of them on the market at various price points. but also make sure that the storage is not local to the camera, that it either is through a subscription service, so it goes somewhere else, or goes to a hub inside your home where if somebody steals the camera, they aren't also stealing the video storage.
Mhm.
It's a good tip.
You know, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
It's not possible to put enough police out
No.
there to police everything all at the same time. It's just, we'd have to have everyone wearing a badge. So watch groups are probably the most effective thing. Now, they should be trained or at least oriented by the police department so that they're doing the right things or not doing the wrong things. And they know who to call. They know what the next action is before they have to take it. And I think Chief Cambridge would be thrilled to show people, get a group together, train them and turn them loose. So that's something that we should put in motion.
And it's not fair. This isn't something that we should be asked to do, but
Mm.
these are crimes of opportunity. They go for the lowest hanging fruit. So hang your fruit up high, lock your car, don't leave valuables out, leave lights on, don't take chances, use common sense. Ian, go ahead.
Are there like statistics available for all this stuff that's going on? Because like as a casual observer, I don't live in the village, so I don't really see any of these things happening, or I don't even know if they're going on like out in my neighborhood, outside of the village. But is there like, how do we get a gauge on that?
Well, that's something that we have to engage Chief Cambridge with. I'd be curious to see that as well, because either crime is really on a huge uptick or it's just more discussed now than it has been. When Bart and I got on the board in 2014, we were seeing a sharp rise in break-ins and what then Chief Buck described as opiate-based crimes. They seem to have declined, but it seems like from what we're seeing, they've risen sharply recently. So that's something that we will be engaging Chief Cambridge for to see if there is some data.
And I think the data that's relevant is not just Richmond, but also the other towns. And
Yeah.
the data is somewhat reliant on the reporting. So there is a sort of catch-22 here. If you have no police, then if people don't report it to state police, how will you get the actual data? But it would appear that these crimes of opportunity are on the increase across multiple towns and locations, from what I understand.
Yeah, from what I've seen as well. Go ahead.
So I live on Tilden and I wasn't personally affected by like they didn't break into my car or anything. We were out of town, but I was just reading the front porch forums and seeing, the emails from our town. Or emails from our neighborhood of everybody that was affected. And, I have 2 young kids in town. I want them to grow up in a safe town. And so personally, even if, I feel like the town should do something. And I, as ideas, I think that, if we were to staff a police officer, having somebody in the evenings only would be maybe an option, because that's obviously when most of these crimes are happening. If there is a police cruiser driving around town and this person passes them, it might deter them. Yes, maybe that's a coincidence and might not happen every time, but I think just having that presence in town would be important to keep people safe and to have a quick response if somebody did call and say that there's somebody in the neighborhood doing something. Right now, it would take the state police much longer than a local police officer to respond.
If they responded.
Yeah, exactly. Like they just don't have the manpower. So I personally feel like having somebody on staff in the evenings would be with talking about the budget. If that's in the budget, just having like, there's not as much crime that happens during the daytime. So I don't really necessarily feel like there needs to be a daytime police officer, but obviously there's some increase in activity right now. And so I feel like there needs to be some response so that it doesn't continue. And then another idea was maybe putting cameras on like the main intersections in town so that you could maybe track which direction the person went or maybe get some sort of visual what the person looks like. I don't know where somebody would store that data in the town building here or whatever, but and then again the neighborhood watch programs, but I think there's a lot of people that are interested, at least on our street, right now, but how sustainable is that for the long term? I don't really know. I think people are pretty upset right now. But will that continue, that somebody will give up an evening of their time for indefinitely? I'm an unpaid, thing. I don't think that will continue. So, personally, with having young kids in town, I think that we should do something about it. I don't think we should just say it's a, multiple town issue and there's nothing we can do about it. I think our town should do something about it.
So in terms of what's effective, it would seem like this is a useful conversation to have with our police chief,
Yeah.
who's engaged in it. Maybe we could squeeze this in like a half hour at the front of our budget meeting next time, because I think it is time sensitive. I also think it's hard to have a discussion of both the data and interventions without the chief here.
Yeah.
And it's awkward to have squeezed this in as a conversation without a properly warned agenda item. So I think that might be an appropriate action to get
Absolutely.
it sort of jump started. In a structured way. Because there arguably, there's no decisions we can make due to open public meeting law and properly warned agenda items tonight anyway. But
Right.
then if we kick it into next week, that's 1 week away.
Plus,
Yeah.
the most important thing is it gives chief time to assemble
Yeah,
a plan, think it through, talk it through, with surrounding departments, whatever was appropriate on his level, and then come to us.
and he has information that we're not privy to in discussions with
Mhm.
law enforcement and surrounding neighborhoods.
But yeah, that's not what I think of when I think of Richmond. I don't think of theft at night and so forth, and it's happening. So yes.
I was talking to
our
someone
town's
about
reputation is at stake.
this, I think it was this afternoon, I was talking to someone about it, and they pointed out that, you always people say, just lock your cars. It's not a big deal. Like everyone everywhere locks the cars. And they
Mhm.
used to think that, and they moved to Vermont and didn't have to lock the cars for
Yeah.
10 years.
Or
and
the
then
house.
they worded it well, and I had never really thought about this, but I always, when people say that, my knee jerk is, well, you say that because you've never had to not lock your cars.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you go from not having to lock your car or your house or whatever, and you just inherently trust your neighbors in your community to having to do that, it's a pretty big shock to your like way of life in your community.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I understand why people are frustrated. It's
Yeah,
a huge fundamental shift. It's a small action, but it's a huge shift in the mindset that
Mhm.
makes you do all that
That's a
stuff.
good point, yeah.
And then
It's
another
it's
thing
a
is like,
communication.
yeah, and I've had job sites robbed, and
over.
I've haven't had an issue in a bunch of
Mhm.
years. And when I was building my house, I had people steal a bunch of stuff out of my house, and it was only the really expensive tools. So it was obviously not
They knew what they were
someone
doing.
doing it for drug money. It was another contractor. So talk about a real like, just a real shock seeing like someone would come in and know that you do that for a living. They would take only the expensive things that you need that they
Mhm.
would need too.
Mhm.
So
From
it's just
your
really,
house.
yeah, it's
Pure
a
greed.
painful experience. So I
Yeah,
understand why
yeah.
everyone's like wants to do something about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know what we do specifically. I don't have any great ideas, but it
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
frustrating. So.
Wow.
Okay,
No.
well, thank you, everybody.
So we're gonna, Josh, can we add that to the next?
Yeah.
meetings?
I think before the budget meeting is a good idea too.
Mhm. Yeah.
We have to limit it to some extent because we have a lot to talk about that night, but yeah, 20 minutes or so at the beginning would be a good idea.
And if the chief is there, it's a nice preamble to discussing the police budget.
Yeah, I think it could work out nicely.
Well,
A final comment I'll make on this is, having been through a number of iterations of conversations about the police force, the number of officers, the budget at various town meetings over 30 years. It does boil down to this. What do the taxpayers want to pay for? And what's like the cost of an officer and cruiser per year? About $100,000, more or less. So for every officer, that's incrementally 100,000, which in our budget is not insignificant, but it really boils down to what services do the taxpayers want to pay for?
Right now, even if we were fully staffed, we wouldn't be a 24/7 department. So to really get to
Correct.
24/7 will be a pretty fundamental shift in the budget
Mhm.
above and beyond becoming fully staffed too.
Yeah, yeah. Because there's the equipment that
Right,
goes with it too. so-
Yeah, equipment, and that's a much more complicated schedule and staffing challenge than just the two offset shifts.
Fortunately, from what I gather, it's not locals stealing from each other. It's people coming from other Vermont towns who live.
The ones that have been caught.
Yeah, yes, exactly. But they're starting to essentially a dossier on who they are, where they're coming
Yeah.
from, where they're going, where the stuff's been found at later
Yeah.
and what it is and so forth. So it's not a problem originating here, but
It's
it's
happening
being
here.
perpetrated here.
Is it,
So
are they Vermont plates? We can't, it's not one more thing we can complain about.
good question. I don't know. Turn your plates over.
Yeah. It does, I mean,
Mhm.
not to beat a dead horse, but I think at our last regular meeting, Chief Cambridge did give us an update about this uptick in, I think it was Heinsberg, Bolton, Richmond,
Mhm.
Huntington and Starksboro. There was like kind of
Mhm.
some, not a network, but like some known group of just like not connected people that were doing stuff everywhere. And they had a school bus stolen, a camper stolen, a bunch of cars,
Yeah, it's weird.
tons of stuff and all those. So might be a short-term uptick, not an actual trajectory, but something's definitely happening in the short term.
Yeah, needs to be stamped out before it becomes normal.
And tip to the criminals, if you're gonna steal something that blends in, not a big yellow school bus or an RV, just.
Have you checked your camper to make sure that there's no one in there? Because the guy who stole the camper, he stole it because he wanted to sleep in it, so.
Really?
And then stole again.
Yeah.
Wonder where
The same one was stolen twice.
Seriously?
He
It's
he
got
still
it
had the
fingerprints on it.
keys and he went back and they hadn't changed the locks on the camper yet and he just. The keys he stole the first time to get back in the second time. Yeah,
Oh, man.
yeah, bold.
I'm glad I have two dogs. It's kind of,
Mm.
got two alarms, yeah.
Okay, a reminder that tomorrow, Tuesday, December
How's it?
3rd,
Ripley.
is the
Yes,
public
Ripley.
meeting for the kickoff on the flooding mitigation scoping study. Josh, want to add anything on that?
Yes, this is the study that's gonna look at, the whole of the Winooski River, Jones Mill Brook, Snipe Island Brook. And Huntington River to try to look for ways to reduce, at least the level of flooding when we do get the torrential downpours. So tomorrow they'll go over a brief overview of sort of their work and what sort of like some sample projects of what can be done potentially. But the main goal of their meeting tomorrow is to receive feedback from the public. So we'll hold it over at the library. I'm assuming there's going to be a decent amount of interest in public engagement in this one. You can also join via Zoom, so both is fine. But they're really looking for feedback from the public on what have you seen happen in your neighborhood? What have you seen happen around town? What ideas do the public have? Sort of large information gathering. There will be future public outreach in the study process. It's probably gonna take them till about June or so to come up with their final report. So there'll be additional opportunities in the future, but tomorrow is a good kickoff.
And that starts at what time?
That starts at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Josh. Next, we have consideration of making an appointment to the Conservation Commission, and I do see Judy is with us tonight.
And Susanna.
Judy, did you want to introduce Suzanne?
Yeah.
Susanna?
Yeah, Susanna has been attending a couple of recent meetings in reference to her project with Raft. I'll let her talk about that if you would like. But she's active and engaged and seems like a very perfect candidate for the Conservation Commission.
That's a good recommendation. Susanna, go ahead. The floor is yours.
What would you like me to talk about?
Whatever you want to tell us about.
Do you
Okay,
want to tell them about your stuff with Raft and how you connected with the Conservation Commission?
yeah, sure. So, I guess I started attending the Conservation Commission, I think it was in June, just because of my own personal interest in, I guess, community engagement and ecology and wanting to learn more about, I guess, the landscape in Vermont and how we interact with it on a human level. And so it's like a kind of an interest of mine that I've had a hard time kind of figuring out how to integrate into my, I don't know if daily life is the right term, but weekly life or monthly life, maybe. So I attended maybe one or two meetings, and then I was in touch with somebody in Huntington about a flood recovery group that was starting to be formed for Huntington, Heinsberg, and Richmond. And there's a steering committee right now that's trying to get Raft going and kind of formalized in the scope of the work that we will be doing. And so I've been working with Raft on a weekly basis, just trying to kind of, like I was saying, formalize our work, get a fiscal sponsor, figure out the scope of our work, at least as it stands now, the short-term projects, the long-term projects. And then I heard from somebody in RCC about an open seat, and I would really love the opportunity to be a part of RCC for a lot of different reasons. One of them being to do some crossover work that uses like native species planting as just as an example of a flood mitigation project. Working with the Friends of the Winooski River, they have a couple of programs that help homeowners and communities plan flood mitigation efforts in ecologically appropriate ways. And I guess the other reasons, some of the many reasons, are just that I think I haven't been aware of living in a place before I moved to Richmond, which I moved from out of state, where there was a conservation commission, and I really appreciate that there is one, and that I really want to learn from the people who are involved in it, and the different speakers that come in to talk, and just the different connections that are made. And I'd love the opportunity to also like work with neighboring towns like Raft is doing on conservation projects, and just kind of feel more connected in a local level and to some extent a state level in these projects. So that's I think I said a lot there. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Susanna. Anybody have any questions?
No, seems like a great fit.
Yeah. Seems like you've got a passion for it, which is essential, I think.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Susanna Zevalov to the Conservation Commission to fill a vacant seat with the term running to 2028.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
This is Bart. I will second that.
Thank you, Bart. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion before calling the motion to a vote?
Just, I'd like to thank you very much.
Definitely.
For stepping up. And then we'll vote.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity a lot.
We appreciate you volunteering. Okay, motion has been made and seconded, calling the motion to a vote. This is a motion to fill a vacant spot on the Conservation Commission. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, aye.
Jay, aye.
And David, aye. Congratulations, Susanna, you're in.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Thank you, Susanna. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you both.
Okay, next we have consideration of making an appointment to the Planning Commission.
I believe she's here.
Rebecca, are you?
RJC.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Hi, Rebecca, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
So do you have any questions of us, or did you want to say anything before we entertain your?
No, I guess I'll just give a brief introduction. Have been coming to Vermont for many, many years. My husband is from Underhill, but officially moved here in June. I have always been a city dweller, but am loving being in this new community. And I think that, you know, as you guys look to updating your zoning and planning and dealing with new state regulations, I think because I have lived all over Asia and in big cities most of my life, I will bring a unique perspective on density and other related issues. I also am very passionate about being a force of good with the current state of the housing crisis in Vermont.
Awesome.
Rebecca, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Alexandria, Virginia, but I've lived all over the world.
Okay. So you probably know where Springfield is.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my hometown.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm from Alexandria. I'm from Alexandria.
But that's okay. It's still Virginia.
Yeah.
Close enough. A little bit more.
But it
urban.
used to be DC.
Alexandria? Did it?
No,
Arlington, I'm
Arlington
sorry.
did. Mhm.
Arlington used to be DC.
Yeah, no, Alexandria is its own person. I see you got a PMP also. How long have you
Yeah.
had that?
I think about 4 years.
Okay. Did you like the exam?
No.
Okay. If you withstood that, I think you can probably withstand anything, so. Very good.
Yeah, I've already been in touch with Virginia and and I've started reading some of the documents, so.
Mhm. Did you get involved or talk with Virginia about the town plan that needs to be renewed?
Yeah,
Okay. Is that something you have any related experience in? I mean, if you got the PMP, you've done planning in a lot of ways, but
really, I don't have direct experience at all. I mean, I think that I have a PMP. I'm a planner by nature. And I'm also passionate about the housing crisis. And so I want to be a force of good and help and learn and help make sure that that is the right plan for the town.
Okay. Well, we need help there for sure. And have you had a lot of conversations with Virginia? Or, I mean, how long have you been talking with her? For a few weeks?
I had lunch with her a couple weeks ago, and we met this summer. I also work for a nonprofit, or I volunteer for a nonprofit that we originally met through called More Perfect Union.
Mhm. Okay. Oh, thank you.
Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we appoint Rebecca Connell to the Town Planning Commission.
Adam, I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Adam. So this is a motion to appoint Rebecca Connell to the Planning Commission to fill a seat with a term running from 2000. Wait a minute, to 2028 or 2000.
Two seats open, so you can.
Yeah, there's two different seats.
Oh,
Right.
Rebecca, did you have a preference as to which seat you wanted?
Want a warm one or a cold one?
Preferably, I guess,
Both get you
I
through
don't know.
Both get you through the hard work of the town plan and then you can decide. So either way,
Yeah,
you're kind
right,
of locked
right.
in for that.
That's true. It's not a big decision on your part. It's, chairs are both the same.
We could appoint you to the Planning Commission tonight and you could choose which term you wanted to accept at some point, I guess.
Okay, that sounds
Either
good.
way, there's a good chance you would get
Yeah,
reappointed.
I
in
don't think
future.
I think it's good to have a term so we can know where she's gonna be. And so it's either you serve till the spring of 2027 or the spring of 2028.
Let's say the spring of 2027. Is there an
Okay.
option to extend?
Oh, yeah.
course.
Yeah, you can always re-up. Just
Okay,
get reappointed.
yeah.
Well, you have to get reappointed either way, but that would be the process.
Okay,
Okay, so this
Yeah.
is a motion to appoint Rebecca Connell to the Planning Commission to fill the seat with a term running until 2027. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
No.
Yes, sir.
Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye?
Bard, aye.
Jay, aye.
And David, I. Congratulations and thank you, Rebecca. You're in.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have consideration of approving an easement for VELCO for the Andrews Community Forest. This is an easement to access utility infrastructure on the property. And I presume you're here to talk about the easement.
Sure. So Vermont Electric Power Supply and Green Mountain Power each have parallel utility easements running east and west through the Andrews Community Forest. They were granted back in the 1920s. And those easements say that they can access the property, the easement area, any way they want. But in reality, from any public highway. But several years ago, Vermont Electric Power Corporation upgraded the utility road that is the center access point for the Andrews Community Forest. It's 2,500 feet-ish, goes up and tees and goes east and west under the utility poles. Last year, they reached out to the town because they wanted to memorialize that road with an easement for utility purposes. They had it surveyed. The easement that is before you has been negotiated between the Vermont Electric and the Andrews Community Forest Committee and Josh, and it's where it is. It's final if it's agreeable with you. The right of way is 25 feet wide it's the center line of the utility road as it is today. A slight sticking point was it was going to cut off parking near Route 2 for us. So the parking we have is senior to the easement. So they've got to drive their utility equipment around our parking area, which will work. And they agreed to, one of the items that was brought up was, year before last, they installed a concrete buttressed bridge to reach western power poles. They took the bridge out but left the abutments. It's kind of unsafe. I asked them if they would remove them and they said no. In exchange, they're leaving them there. They're putting fencing up, split rail fencing. I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's attractive, and they've provided the town with a certificate of insurance, insuring the town. They are putting no ATV signs up for us so that it is the western Old Vast Trail. We tried to get them to not use that because of the new road, but again, they want to continue using it. And they have a right to use it. So in exchange for all of that, we're going to be cutting a check to the town for approximately $11,000. It is the committee's wish that go into the Andrews Community Forest side of things. We've all looked at the utility road easement, and it's, if it's your pleasure to approve it and sign it, then I think the next step is for Josh or one of us to reach out to Vermont Land Trust to get their final say in it. And they are aware of it, and in all likelihood, they will support it.
Bart? I have a question and a comment, and this is really just for the context for taxpayers to know what our Andrews Community Forest Reserve currently is. Do we know?
Give me a minute.
And the only reason is to set a sense of scope. You know, it's not like we have $1,000 and we're adding $11,000.
Right.
I know we have it in one of the more recent budget.
I'm going to say
So
30 to 40, but I don't
That
know what it
sounds
is.
ballpark correct to me. And it really, it doesn't change my opinion a lot. It's
Right.
just, I think it's a factual point. While we're looking at that, right, I suspect you see more easements than I do. I am struck by the introductory phrase, know all men by these presents. Does that strike us as somewhat outdated as a legal phrase to be used in a public?
Like that hasn't been updated in
Modern
100
language.
years?
Yes, their in-house counsel drafted it. I was more concerned about
The
getting
content?
more money
Yes,
and
agreed.
having the bridge abutments removed, but you're right, it is old-fashioned. Our attorney did look at it as well, the town's attorney.
I would go,
Change that because they have to have a precedent to change it, so.
Right.
Well, I Googled the phrase and descriptions like such with outdated.
I just did the same thing in the top 6 things, like an outdated way of starting a legal document, whatever.
I would only observe that I think it is not only outdated, but inappropriate in this year. And that's not, I'm not going to hold up this process, but I feel obligated to note that when it's the second.
Well,
So there's like-
if it's
because
your
it's been
pleasure, we
argued.
can ask them to
Doubt that they
revise it.
change it.
Well, I am surprised because, as you know, I've always been very vocal that the law profession is the most ethical profession out there.
So if they're willing to change it, that to me would be ideal, to something that is less,
Sexist.
yeah.
Mr. Chair, I tell you what, it's accepted and used legal language, and the reason they like it that way is because it's
That's
been
the way it's
tested
always
and tested
been.
and thrown against the wall and had stuff thrown at it, and it stood the test of
Yeah.
challenge.
No, I
So,
was joking.
yeah, they
It's-
don't like to change anything that's a hackneyed
I don't
phrase.
think the use of the phrase should stop us from
Agreed.
wording it, however.
It's written in legalese.
But it's weird, yeah.
I just think I don't think we
Never
should
gonna-
look at it
We're
and
never
fail
gonna
to
change
note
it unless someone says something and they
Yeah.
change
That's
it.
right.
So.
Well, Josh and I can go back.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing you could do is you could approve it with the suggestion that we strike that or change it. They actually put my name on here to sign this. So if you're okay with me signing on behalf of the select board as a duly authorized agent, if we can strike that or not, kind of gives us the opportunity, because I think they wanted to have this wrapped up by end of
To the end of
December.
the year.
Yeah.
So
that
if you
doesn't
give
change the-
authority, and then if we can change that and it's not material, then we'll try to change it, because I think it's a good idea. If we can set the precedent, let's set it.
Yeah, right, without.
And the balance of the budget, sorry, the balance of the fund as I just had it up, as of 10/23/24, so probably still the same balance, we haven't spent anything out of it, is $29,501. So adding $11,000 would be pretty significant to the forest fund.
Okay.
And if you're gonna do that, I would suggest that you add that to the end of the motion to be deposited in the Andrews funds. That way it's very clear where that money should go.
Are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve the easement for VELCO to access the power lines located in Andrews Community Forest, which includes payment by VELCO to the town of $2,500 maintenance payment and an $8,549.45 easement payment to be deposited, both to be deposited in the the Andrews Community Forest Reserve Fund.
This is Bart, I'll second that.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Bart. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote.
Sorry, do we need to say and then we appoint Josh? Does that need to be part of the motion or does it not need to be part of the motion?
I mean,
For your cover.
sure, yeah, I guess you
No,
could say and appoint
amend the
Josh.
Motion to
Yeah,
add,
no.
to appoint Josh Arneson, town manager, as duly appointed representative authorized to sign the easement.
We have a
Um,
second on the,
And second, the amended motion.
Do you want to add something about with or without all known, know all men by these presents
Preferably.
stricken?
Preferably with an alternative introduction to know all men by these presents.
There you go.
That achieves a gender neutral
Yes.
statement of comparable value.
Well, folks, likely to come back the word persons.
yeah,
I'm
That would
okay with
work.
that word.
It's pretty inclusive.
Right.
Long motion there.
okay, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye?
Bart, aye.
Jane, I.
David, I. Great, thanks for coming to us.
Thank you.
tonight.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for your work getting us to this place.
Thank you.
Next, we have consideration of approving a 4th of July Parade and Fireworks Committee holding a coin drop to be held on Saturday, May 24th, 2025. This is pretty straightforward. This will be from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the intersection of Route 2 and Bridge Street.
And we're always happy to have volunteers to work a shift, even if it's just an hour. Costumes are not required, but are strongly suggested.
Okay, ready for a motion?
This is Bart. I move to approve the 4th of July Parade and Fire, 4th of July Parade and Fireworks Committee to hold a coin drop at the intersection of Route 2 and Bridge Street on Saturday, May 24th, 2025 from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye?
Bart, aye.
Jane, I.
David, I. It's approved.
All right.
And now that it's 7:35, it's time for approval of minutes, warrants, and purchase orders.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes from the special budget meeting on November 25th as presented.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye?
Bart, aye.
Jane, I.
And David, I.
I have to
Next.
say, those are some of the driest minutes I've ever reviewed.
Is that a compliment?
I don't know. I don't need just a statement. Not that they're always riveting, but they were.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay.
They
A second.
This is Bart. I will second that.
Thank you, Bard. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, aye.
Jay, hi.
And David, I.
Be nice to look forward. to
Draft minutes are approved.
What they say.
Let's do warrants next, so we don't forget them.
Let's do,
The purchase orders
Purchase
are part
order.
of the warrants.
yeah, usually purchase order should come before warrants because you're,
Okay, but don't let me forget them.
I won't because I actually have a change on the warrant, so I'm prepared with a statement prior to that, so we won't forget it this time, and I'll call up the purchase orders if that's helpful.
Yes.
Again?
Yeah, but only by like $200, $268 more
What are we gonna do? Put a Post-it on it this time?
essentially. Here, I've got draft. You guys, this should be helpful. Draft language that I didn't get to you guys last week, but I've got it for you this afternoon.
So, would somebody like to move to amend purchase order 4950 to Heinsberg Sand and Gravel for material for emergency road repairs in an amount not to exceed $115,022.56?
How many cents?
56.
There you go.
I move that we amend purchase order number 4950 to Heinsberg Sand and Gravel, the purchase of gravel to an amount of $115,000, $115,022.56.
This is Bart. I will second that.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Bard. Any further discussion?
Like scratch.
Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote. This is a motion to amend purchase order 4950 to Heinsberg Sand and Gravel for material for emergency road repairs in an amount not to exceed $115,022.56. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, aye.
Jay, hi.
David, I. Purchase order is approved.
It does strike me that that's like 2 loads of gravel. Can we just like budget an amount for gravel? We do have a budget, I guess, is it?
Kind of exceeded
Want to
Emergency.
budget separately too, because it's for FEMA stuff? so
Yeah.
It's easy to
Right.
keep it
So we're
separate.
trying to keep it all sort of
Josh,
together.
question for you that, I mean, when these amounts are amended, does that have to filter back into what we presented to FEMA or? have we
They'll never,
presented-
I don't think they'll ever look at the purchase orders. They'll look at
Good.
Bottom line.
they will look at the individual invoices.
Yeah.
And we'll tie each invoice back to a specific spot on a road, and then they'll tie that back to how big was the hole, how much material went in there. Does that
They'll
tie
do that.
out? They literally do that.
That's why I was asking,
They
because,
get-
you know. you hate
They won't
to
look at the
step on
purchase
gravel.
orders. They'll look at a lot of things, but I don't think they'll look at the purchase orders.
Oh, okay.
Well, if they want to look at the purchase orders, we can keep them entertained for hours.
And they'll have a really good study of your signature.
Since it's so early and I want to waste 5 minutes, do they?
We're already a half an hour
When they
over.
survey the roads, like initially,
Yeah.
when everything's messed up, do they try to get a sense of how much material is gonna be needed so
Yes.
that they can gut check our POs against that?
Yeah, I mean,
Obviously, there's a huge amount of
Hang up,
wiggle room
yeah.
there, but is that even something they're trying to do, or is it so?
I think they're trying to like document as much as they can with photographs and just kind of keep things moving. It would be great if we had that level of like, oh, this is where it should be.
It comes in like 10 times, they'll throw a flag, but otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, Pete tries to keep a good eye on everybody, but admittedly, in the emergency situation, it's not a perfect system for trying to like get these things quoted perfectly.
I'll bet with the
For sure.
experience they've had, though, they've got a pretty good sense of
It-
I mean, the FEMA people.
Well, and so FEMA doesn't actually do the survey of that at the beginning. It's our guys going out and, you know, ideally, Pete's usually really good about photographing everything. This storm, I think he didn't get as much as he would like to have initially because he was running straight out. We were hiring contractors and we were moving pretty quickly. FEMA usually doesn't come in until later. They and Pete, so our representative and Duncan went out. Gosh, I want to say 6 to 8 weeks after the storm to go kind of take a look at what things were looking like, take photos as it stood at that point. And that gave our representative a sense of sort of the scope of the damage, where we were at with repairs. And that helps us sort of help to document even that late, like, okay, there's a disturbed area. We know it was about yay deep. Because when they do come back with those specific questions, the more documentation we have, the better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, FEMA really acts as town, do the work that's necessary to get your town back into order, and then we'll come in later.
Great.
and look at things. And they didn't even declare this one a disaster until
It took a long.
late August
Yeah,
or
well, I think people are
September.
on pins and needles.
So by the
wondering.
time they're actually able to be here and inspect things, it takes a while. What they will take more time and inspect is anything that we didn't initially immediately fix. So for instance, Old Jericho Road, we didn't fix that immediately. And same with Dugway, there was some sloughing there that we needed an engineer report on. So there will some people to look at that, but by the time they get here, we got 90% of it at least started.
Yeah.
So.
It's encouraging to hear, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next, I'd
Did
entertain.
you actually make the vote on that one and approve it?
I don't think.
Mm,
we did.
No,
we're
sorry,
not.
I'm sorry to ask you questions.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure we didn't skip
thank you.
over that. So I think we need to make.
We
the
vote
actual
twice, it'll be the
motion
same anyway, so
Yeah.
we should vote twice.
On Lafayette, this is the guardrail one. Yeah, right. So, oh wait, were you going to the
We
guardrails
haven't
next?
moved- We haven't moved left.
Okay, so we did move.
We
the sand
voted
and
on the
gravel.
first one,
Yeah,
voted
now
on
we're,
it.
okay, sorry, I want to make sure.
and then we finished the discussion after the vote.
Perfect. And now,
Now we're on to the next.
excellent.
So next,
I'm
I'd
out of order,
entertain a
it's fine,
motion
so.
to approve purchase order 5084 to Lafayette Highway Specialties for guardrails for emergency flood repair in an amount not to exceed $13,371.50.
I make a motion that we approve purchase order number 5084 to Lafayette Highway Services for an amount not to exceed $13,371.50.
Thank you, Adam. Do we have a second?
This is Bart. I will second that.
Thank you, Bard. Any questions? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, aye.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, aye.
Aye. David, aye. Motion carries. Next, I'd entertain a motion to approve purchase order 5154 to Stone Environmental for a flood mitigation study in the amount of $124,766.
And Josh, this has backup documentation, I assume, with
Oh,
showing
yeah.
your scope of work and all that stuff, so.
Yeah, you guys saw their proposal, when we hired them initially, and we've got that in agreement with them.
Mm.
And then every time they submit an invoice, it's very detailed as far as what they're working on.
Yeah.
I think there's actually an invoice in the warrants tonight, if you'd like to take a look at it.
This is just the total amount.
This is the total amount we
Whole
put it
thing,
in,
will
so
come
they'll,
piece.
they'll invoice us every month for the next 6 to 8 months as they
They get
finish it up.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We might restate the source of funds for this as well.
Funding, so, well, 42 is the grant fund source that we've,
Well, just the taxpayers, because this will, like, the taxpayers will know, this is how much and how are we paying for it?
yeah, so this is 100% grant funded. Oh, you mean restated just inferably? Gotcha. Yeah, this is 100% grant funded.
Okay, good.
So yeah, there was initially a match, and that match is being covered by the state. So this is not being paid for by the taxpayers, and this is related to the work that we're doing tomorrow for the kickoff study.
Mr. Chairman, the matter of the purchase order 5154 to Stone Environmental, I move the town approve the expenditure of $124,766, which is being funded by grants. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have a second?
This is Bart, I will second that.
Thank you, Bard. Any further discussion?
Should add as a flood mitigation study. I think it's,
Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, aye.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, aye.
Jay, aye.
And David, aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
On the warrants, this one here for PMP septic, I accidentally coded that and put it in there, and I meant to ask Pete about it because it was for Williams Hill. And I thought it was, initially when I looked at it, I thought it was for Volunteers Green or Browns Court, the porta potties we were doing there all summer. And it seemed odd, like Williams Hill. So I didn't get it, so it accidentally on the warrant, I'd like to have it, so when you approve it, just remove, as amended to remove the $120 from PMP septic. What it's actually for is one of the contractors, I think it was Cowles, who was doing work up on Williams Hill in relation to the flood, got a porta potty for his guys while they were up there, and then they accidentally invoiced us. So I'll send it to the PMP tomorrow to make sure that they know to get that to Craig so that he can have that for his records and they can pay it, and we'll be charged for it eventually. But I'd rather have it clean going through him. So if you could amend the warrant to
Can't wait
reduce
to
to
see that
$120.
$300 porta potty charge come to us.
Well, no. it's,
Oh, sorry, 240.
Must have been extra heavy.
Look, we have a motion to approve the warrants as amended with the deduction of the $120 for P&P septic for Williams Hill.
I make a motion that we approve the warrants as read with the recommended to remove the $120 for P&P septic for Williams Hill Porta Potty.
Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Lisa. Any other questions on the warrants? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote. This is a motion to approve the warrants as presented and amended. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, I.
Florida, aye.
Jason.
And David, I. Minutes, warrants, and purchase orders all approved. Items for next agenda. We would like to invite Chief Cambridge in to discuss crime, statistics, trends, thoughts, prevention, budgeting.
Human nature.
And what actions both individuals and the town can take to perhaps mitigate the future occurrence of crime.
And good point. And it's some things maybe people shouldn't do, like don't try to apprehend somebody yourself.
Right, because you don't know when that person may have a gun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
the
just
whole
found one. Yeah.
neighborhood watch thing can get a bad rep after the whole Florida Zimmerman
you
thing.
looking at?
Oh, yeah, the stand your ground.
Yeah, so it can go both
Yeah,
ways. It can
yeah.
end really
Yes,
poorly
good.
for everyone, so we don't wanna
Good point.
get in a situation where we're causing more harm to people.
Vigilante.
That's why there
Yeah.
is neighborhood watch training.
Yeah.
Right,
And it
right.
can be done by people who know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Not
And
us.
I don't think
Overall, it
it's
can be very
lost on
good.
any of us that the rate of gun ownership in our state and presumably our town is really high. So there are a lot of firearms
Mhm.
in households. So that is something to consider as we talk about what people do to intervene or not.
And as you pointed out earlier, it seems like a bunch of the cars that have been found have had stolen firearms in them, so there just seems to be firearms
Yeah.
all around.
Yeah,
So-
and people feel comfortable enough with them, leave them sitting on the seat.
Yeah.
I
So
guess
just can make an
that's a little scary.
unfortunate situation worse.
Mhm.
Well, and I'm sorry to carry this out, but it's somewhat generational. In the 70s and 80s, it was not at all unusual to see pickup trucks with gun racks in the back and a
Mhm.
deer rifle and a shotgun.
Mhm.
Loaded.
And they weren't locked. They were
You
just
see the
there.
Parkland High School parking lot.
Oh, yeah.
And that is true as well. So it was not that long ago that that was a really common occurrence. I'm gonna guess a lot of people still have firearms in their cars in various ways. So it's a caution that not only is it, whatever we think about people using them to defend themselves, they are also a high value item for theft.
Mhm.
That's true.
When I was in high school, the parking lot was full. And nobody. That was.
Because kids would go hunting right after school.
Right.
I grew up in the same part of the world. I mean, in Virginia,
Yeah.
oh my God, it was like a sacred right to go hunting after
Mhm.
school.
Mhm.
Gym teacher would go target practice.
Our
and the students
next
would-
meeting, we're talking about, so this is gonna be on the budget.
Within
meeting,
the
right?
budget meeting, yeah.
And maybe half an hour for this at the front, because it could go on for 3 hours, arguably.
Yeah, we have to
So-
somehow.
I
Yeah,
think half an hour is kind of the max we can do in the
Yeah.
budget meeting, right?
exactly. If it needs to continue, then we'll.
Kick
put
it forward.
into the
Say
next-
for our next non-budget meeting, we should
Yeah.
talk about fire department staffing and response and all that stuff. I know that there's multiple people in the fire department at all levels have brought it up recently.
Yeah, yeah.
I know we had mentioned it kind of in a roundabout way, but it's more people have brought it up since
No, it's
then.
an incredibly huge priority. It's a matter of life and limb for.
It's also a huge topic, so it's
Mhm.
tough to like,
Mhm. Well, it's
wrap our
especially
head
for
around
them,
how we get
for
going
the
on
Fire
it, but-
department, it's
Yeah.
their only issue, maybe.
and thing that struck me the most is that the people bringing it up, the fire department, a lot of the people in the fire department, I don't know if it's the type of people it attracts, the type of people the fire department creates, both have their implications, but they're not the type of people to like reach out.
You say
Or
strong silent.
willy-nilly,
Yeah.
they try to get things
Oh,
done
so they
themselves,
can-
and so
oh,
for them
yeah.
to reach out and say that something's wrong, something's wrong.
That's, they could, yeah, it's a
We
good way
need
to
to address
summarize it,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just note that Huntington, not that long ago, went to a paid chief and I don't know, I'm sorry, Heinsberg. And I'm not sure what they did for staff, if they've hired paid
And
staff as well.
Williston what percentage of Williston staff are paid?
I don't know now, it's growing, but I know they're having another hiring, they're hiring for another person per shift right now, I believe, so it's talked to someone who put an application in today.
Yeah.
I think
believe at
Heinsberg
one
has,
point Like somebody said, could we contract with, I mean, there's always mutual aid.
Yeah.
But is it time to consider just contracting with Williston? Would they be willing to do that?
That's
If
a
all we
good
have is
question.
two guys north of 75 years old
Yeah.
showing up for calls, maybe that's, I mean, I don't like it. I don't like not having a
Well,
part of it, but staffing is a huge crisis.
well, that and we can spread training costs out over a wider net too.
Yeah.
Same training, so.
I mean, we're pretty fortunate in Vermont. I know this is probably we should talk about this again, but we're pretty fortunate to have the fire academy really supports everyone with pretty cheap training. So the training costs in the fire department in Richmond anyway, and this varies per department, but it's pretty close as, you know, we pay our firefighters hourly to do the training. So if it's 2 hours of training, they get paid, you know, approximately $26.50 for that total training.
It's not gonna break our
And there's
budget.
no benefits there, obviously, because it's part-time and so it's, the cost of the training is pretty minimal.
Yeah.
So it really is. The cost would be going to the leap of a full-time
Yeah.
employee.
Yeah.
And we've talked about,
Yeah.
you know, we could talk about this again, obviously, but we've talked about all the options. Williston is a great first call for mutual aid.
Yeah.
But even being full-time, having to commute to Richmond in the truck, even being in the station and ready to go, they don't usually make it here before we get there, even with the limited staff. It's just far enough that
Yeah.
those couple of minutes can make a pretty big difference,
And
especially
where
car
in
accidents
Richmond
and
makes a
stuff.
lot of
That's where it's been a thing is,
Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of options to consolidate and contract and do mutual
Usually
aid and
exploring
coverage
all-
during days, full-time coverage
Yeah.
during specific times of day, not necessarily 24/7. I think people hear full-time and they think
Clearly
full-time
there's-
24/7.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily what's needed.
Yeah.
That's not what Heinsberg does. That's not what Williston did until last few years.
What
I
would
mean,
start a
maybe-
discussion like that? I mean, how would something like that, discussion?
No,
like
that's a
that
really good
start?
question. I honestly don't know the answer to
First
that.
person's gonna have to raise their hand.
I
and
think it
say,
would have to be
"Well."
those guys on the select board or whatever.
Town manager, town manager.
It could be. Well, it's probably a
As a-
firefighter in every select board.
Take off select board hat, put on firefighter hat. It's the select board.
Clamshells.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that surrounding towns are having, even the towns that have full-time departments or partially full-time are having similar challenges, and other departments that are not full-time are having identical challenges, so no one is going to shy away from having this conversation. If we start it,
That's good.
people will want to have it.
Yeah, good.
Might not reach the same conclusions, but
Well, that's all right. You know, getting the discussion going is sometimes shutting it off is the hard part.
I'll just say, one of the things that often comes up is our opportunities for regionalization when you talk
Yeah.
about comparable things, and for better and worse, mostly worse, the track record of regionalization in Vermont is
spotty.
not
There.
inspiring. Just dispatch ran into so many hurdles, and there are lessons to be learned from that.
Yeah.
I never will understand that.
You know,
Dispatch
and
well, yeah.
everyone has its own story, right? So, but that is one of the things perhaps to contemplate is some form or some element of regionalization, and frankly, pros and cons, but we have our own sort of minor version of regionalization between Heinsberg and Richmond with policing. That is perhaps the most, you know, ambitious, creative thing that I'm aware of in terms of towns sharing things. For what that's worth.
Other items for next agenda?
Just chief, I think.
I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Bart. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Third.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
Adam, I.
Calling the motion to a vote, please identify your
Well,
vote.
you're gonna fire vote.
Yeah,
Adam, I.
Lisa, I.
Bart, aye.
Jay, huh?
David, I.
Not often we adjourn, I think there's been for before they close.
Thank you, everybody.